What is the creepiest thing that has ever happened while you were home alone? When I was a kid, I'd be home by myself for about 30 or 40 minutes after school one spring when I was about 10 when an older boy, about 16 or 17, would hang out in our yard and play with our family dog. We lived 8 miles out of town and he wasn't a neighbor and I'd never seen him before. I told my mom and she didn't really believe me because there were no new families in the county that spring. This boy was beautiful, but for some reason he terrified me and I'd come home and run to the house from the bus, lock all the doors and peek out my windows at the boy while he slowly befriended my giant German Shepherd. He'd sit on the lawn and pet the dog and stare at the house smiling if he saw the curtains twitch, and every day he'd get a bit closer to the house. A girl a grade younger than me approached me at school the next week. I didn't know her well and she was always a little off. She pulled me behind the playground slides and told me that she knew her brother had been walking to my house every day after school to try and play with me and that I should never ever let him get me. I was naive and asked why and she just started to cry and beg me not to tell but to be careful and to run away if he came close. I got home and told my dad what she'd said. My dad worked from home the next weekend. I never saw or heard from that boy again. I didn't really think much of it until much later found out that he'd been sent away again and then years later died from cancer. I found out from another of his siblings who I had become friends with. They shuddered when they told me he was dead and said that they didn't even feel guilty for being grateful he was gone because of the horrible trauma his sisters had gone through before he was sent away, and that he was the only truly evil person they'd ever encountered. Well, I wasn't alone, but I was with a teenage babysitter, so we were at home without an adult when a strange man just walked in the front door where we were playing and looked surprised to see us there. I remember the man claiming to be a pizza delivery driver and asking us if we ordered a pizza. My babysitter was quick to react and asked him why he had just walked into the house and also where the pizza is if he was actually there to deliver a pizza. The guy said it was in his car and that he'd go get it. My babysitter closed and locked the door behind him, and shortly afterwards there was a loud knock at the door. This time a large shirtless man was standing outside also claiming to be a pizza delivery guy. Still no pizza, of course. My babysitter wasn't having any of it and yelled through the door to tell the man he was calling 911. Thankfully, it was at this point the two guys got back in their car and drove away. I remember my babysitter being frustrated with the 911 dispatcher because they thought he was saying he was afraid of a pizza delivery person. It left us all with a lingering uncomfortable feeling, mainly concerned that the two guys might return, and it led my parents to get an alarm system after that incident. Looking back on it now, I can see how wrong things could have gone if it weren't for the quick thinking of my babysitter. It might be reasonable to assume burglary was their initial intention, but I have always wondered what the intentions of the second guy was. That part is probably what is most unsettling to me. I had an issue with a scary customer while I was working as a hostess during college, and the customer was hanging around outside my work after the altercation. I lived so close that you could see my house front door from my work front door. My boss let me sneak up the back door and sent someone to talk to the customer to distract them so I could get home discreetly. I went home and stayed upstairs for a few hours. Doors locked and curtains are drawn. I would be home alone for the weekend. Co-workers texted that the customer eventually had to be removed by police later after I had calmed down. I decided to shower. I could get naked and vulnerable while in the shower. There was a series of loud bangs and stomping sounds in my house. I was paralyzed in fear. Obviously, the customer had seen me come home and had come back to find me. Then the front door slammed, and the house was quiet. After a few minutes, I got out of the shower shaking and got dressed before opening the bathroom door. The house was fine, and I was alone. That the door was unlocked, otherwise unchanged. It wasn't until over a month later that my roommate/landlord informed me they had come home early the weekend for travel supplies, suitcases, etc. Hence the banging. They disappeared to go tree planting out of the province and out of service. That was the longest weekend alone of my life. I shared a wall with a family on one side and a middle-aged couple on the other. I woke one morning at around 5 a.m. to the sound of a woman screaming at the top of her lungs and some loud thumps that lasted around 20 seconds. Then it was completely silent. It happened so fast that I wasn't sure where the noise had come from or if it was even real. I thought about calling the police or in investigating, but after 15 minutes of no noise at all, I fell back asleep. The next day as I got home from work, I saw the middle-aged couple getting home. The woman had a cast on her leg and a cast on her arm and visible bruises on her face. Her husband was helping her up the stairs. I asked what had happened and her husband said that she had had a work accident. I used to live in a house on top of a mountain in the middle of the woods with no hot running water or electricity. I was about 6 and my mom and dad moved thereafter. Getting married, Dad built the house when he was 17. It was a straw bale house, super cool place to live. Every night was lit by candles, and the day held endless exploration in the woods. The biggest downside was that we had an outhouse. I wasn't alone, but it were just my mom and I. Late one September, the night we had moved in a few months prior and were starting to feel settled, my dad was out of town for a week on a business trip and mom was watching me. It was late, probably 8 or 9. Candles were lit and we were reading together on the couch next to the fire. An important detail is that the floor is super open so you can see basically all of it from the couch. There we are on top of a mountain at the night when there is a knock on the front door. The front door is sliding glass so you can see completely out, but people can also see, and outlined against the dark is the silhouette of a man with an axe. My mom shoves me in my boots and coat and stations me by the back door. If I scream, "Run and don't stop running," she told me. The look of fear is engraved in my memory. I had my hand on the latch and was freaking out because of my hands are tiny. The door latch was big and hard to open at the best of times, and I didn't think I could get it open instead of running into the woods with me. My mom became a statistic for every white woman in the first 5 minutes of a horror movie and did the unthinkable. She opened the sliding glass door. "Hello," said the man with the axe. "I'm here to deliver your fire." It turns out my dad had hired him to bring a couple of cords of wood to the house, and the guy had no social awareness whatsoever. Didn't even cross his mind how creepy showing up at night unannounced with and the axe would be. Context: I was maybe 12 or 13. My parents were visiting my sister at university and my brother was in town visiting his girlfriend. We lived on a ranch about 25 minutes from town, with my only neighbors being my grandparents, who are very old. Our house is built on the concrete platform on a hill, so there are some wooden steps to get from the back porch to the ground, which is right outside my window. I was sitting in my room watching YouTube, chilling, when I heard a heavy creak on one of the steps. I paused my video and stared at the window, closed my blinds, knowing that all I have to do is open them up and see what it is, but I ignore it and keep watching YouTube. Maybe in my new passes and I hear 3 more heavy steps. Sounds like the bottom of boots on wood. I sprang out of bed and into the hallway while calling my mom. I frantically explain the situation quietly and she asks me a simple question: "Is the dogs even barking?" "No, I have 3 white labs all in the room that has a clear side of the back porch." I let out a sigh of relief and hang up the phone the second I end the call with my mom. My dogs absolutely explode, barking, baring teeth, hair standing up, and all. I want to get a gun, but all of them require me to run across the main room, which are all windows, and I don't want to see what's out there, or they see me. I run to my room and grab a pocket knife and call my brother, telling him to get home immediately. My dogs bark for maybe another few seconds and they stop. Never found out what was behind the blinds. I wasn't in the house, but I had just gotten home at 2 a.m. and smoked some weed in my car before stepping in, as I always did. I was parked in the driveway and scrolling my phone when I noticed someone walked past my car. Weird that I didn't think anything of it, not until I looked up and saw a man standing directly behind my car, just staring in my direction. Panicked and high as I just froze. Him was yelling for someone. I thought if I just ignored him, he'd go away, which I thought he did literally. As I felt safe enough to make my way in, this man popped up in front of my car, slapped against it. I drove off and called the cops. They found him passed out on my neighbor's patio. It's still not funny. Standing in the kitchen talking on the phone, and there's a thumping on the floor under my feet. There's no way into the area under my feet. There's a cinder block wall between the basement and a hollow space beyond, like they meant to make a bigger space, but left a dirt pocket. I only know it's there because the hole where the plumbing runs through is overly large, and we patched it when we moved, and the thumping happened again, like someone hitting the ceiling with their fists below me. The lights flicker, the picture on the television jumps up and down. I run to the living room and jump into the couch, bury my head under the blanket. My parents pulled into the driveway and everything stops. It never happened again. That was 33 years ago. Last year, was sick, fell asleep on the couch, woke around midnight as I was laying there trying to motivate me to walk the 2 flights of stairs to bed. I heard a slight creak from the front porch. I didn't think much of it. We get opossums and raccoons on the porch from time to It meant just as I was sitting up, I heard that the doorknob to the front door turned. They turned it slow, probably just to see if it was locked. Since I was sick, I questioned if what I heard was real or was I just feverish and hearing. I checked the curtains too. The window, looking out on the porch, blinds down, curtains fully closed, blackout curtains, so it probably appeared dark inside. Then another noise like light footsteps, and the knob turned again. I thought about trying to peek through the curtains and blinds, but decided I didn't want to tip my visitor off to my presence. Checked to make sure all other first floor windows had the blinds/curtains closed. Waited another 10 minutes and thought it. I went to bed. I figured any of the attempt at a break-in would be heard and I would deal with it. Then nothing happened again that night. It was night one winter when I was in college. I lived off campus and it was just me there while my roommates were back home. We had a front door but rarely used it and mostly just used the side door on the other side of the house. It was pretty late and I went outside for a smoke before going to bed. Sometimes I like to pace around the house when it's quiet, and that night I did just that and found my way to the front of the house. Now it's dark outside and pitch black in our entryway. I happened to turn around at the right second and see some strange guy standing by our doorway. I jumped and asked him what he was doing there. He was angry at me for throwing parties. Note: we hadn't had anyone over in weeks, and then asked for our names. I told him to get lost before I call the cops and he left. And that was that weird ordeal. Think about it now, and then never saw him again. My parents still don't believe me about this, but thankfully my friends do, since this isn't the first time stuff like this had happened at the house and they had witnessed some of it. My not so much. I was probably 13 or 14. My parents had friends over and all the adults went somewhere, a Christmas party I think. Because the adults left, I was stuck with watching 3 dogs, which were pretty easy. Let them out when they go to the door, check their water ready stuff since it was around Christmas. We had these fake glass candles on the windows and plugged in for decoration. Thanks for listening. The subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more things you don't want to know. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories.